Hey guys, this is Dan at Rangers Ridge. I wanted to make a belt knife selection video for those of you who are picking gear for some of our courses, as well as giving you guys the general knowledge so you can go out and get a belt knife that actually functions for you, okay? We're looking at a knife that is going to get your basic chores done, okay, at camp or in the woods, around the homestead. Um, so that's our focus on what we want the purpose of the belt knife to be, is get to those chores. So let's start going. So let's get started with metal type. Now there's lots of different metals out there. You have different numbers and schemes and everything else, and people can really just get into the weeds on that, and that's great. Go deeper with your knowledge. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to just break it up into two categories. We're going to talk about high carbon knives and stainless steel knives. Generally, everything falls into one of those categories. Um, High carbon blades. The benefit of high carbon is that you can sharpen it easily in the field. Stainless is not so easy because it's a harder steel, and it's not as easy to sharpen in the field. Stainless does have chromium added to it, though. That's where you get the shiny reflective finish on there, just like this pocket knife. Um, that gives you corrosion resistance, okay? High carbon does not have that. High carbon, after you use it, you should be maintaining your blade, okay? Make sure you get some fat or oil or something on there to prevent that corrosion. Another thing high carbon does do well is high carbon allows you to do a cold spark with a flint and steel method type thing, where stainless steel doesn't. Okay, so which one's better? That depends solely on you, your stewardship, and your skill. If I'm skilled enough with a blade not to ding it up with my techniques or just paying attention to what I'm doing, and I also follow along consistently with my maintenance for stropping my blade back to sharpness and oiling and maintaining it, then high carbon is definitely the direction that I would go. If you're not that big into stewardship, or your skill's not just there yet and you're finding you're dinging up your knives, you might want to go with the stainless, because it's harder. It'll maintain that edge better. Um, and also, if you're not maintaining it consistently, you want something that's going to prevent corrosion, and the stainless does that well. Okay, let's talk quick about the profile of the knife. Now, the profile is, if you look at the knife from the side, is the shape that the knife has from its spine and from this edge down here, and where does it come together as a point. Okay, that's where I'm talking about the profile. Now, there's hundreds of different profiles out there. Generally, what I like to see in a belt knife is that it has a slight drop point. So instead of going straight across, this point just drops just slightly here. Okay, giving you a good point here to be able to get in those small areas. But it also keeps all this belly right here, which is great for animal processing and some of the slicing skills that we use, okay? So that slight drop point is the profile that you kind of want to shoot for. A lot of the Pucos, this is a GB2 Metsupuko. Pucos have that type of shape, that profile, okay? So let's talk about the tang of a knife. Now, the tang is how far into the blade, this one, how far into the handle does the blade material go, okay? This is a full tang knife. As you can see on the end, it has the metal coming out. This is full metal all the way through here with just the handle wrapped around it, okay? That's a full tang knife. This tends to be the strongest version, okay? There's other ones that are partial tangs or rat tangs where there's not as much material in the handle. But I want to say this. A lot of times people want to say, let's go out and just get the biggest, heaviest, toughest, strongest one we got. Well, the problem with that is if you do that constantly, you're always buying something that's probably more expensive. It's probably heavier, and it's probably beyond where you need it to be strong anyway. We want to look for adequate. A lot of times, some partial tang knives will work great. Here is a Mora right here, which this isn't a full tang knife, but this knife works great, okay? And again, it's a lot about the skill that you bring to the knife, okay? If you're using this incorrectly, of course you're going to break it. If you're using it appropriately, using the right techniques and learning how to use it appropriately, it will be more than adequate for your needs, okay? So you don't need the biggest, baddest knife on the planet, all right? So a lot of my knives are full tang, and I'll tell you why. One of the benefits that I find with full tang is, again, that pommel that sticks out on the end. I like to use that as a scraper when processing material instead of, and save my spine and my blade for other chores. But this pommel down here works great for that. The pommel also works great as far as when you're trying to crush things, okay? So that's a benefit of a full tang knife there. And again, the type of tang on the knife is your choice, okay? When you're looking for it, just understand what you're going to use it for and where your skill level is. I will say I wanted to point out one more thing on the issue of tang. So here we go with a survival knife, a Rambo style survival knife, okay? A lot of these knives have a hollow handle. There is absolutely no tang going through this handle at all. The blade material ends right here at this conjunction. This conjunction is a fail point on these because the leverage and stuff that you do just with normal chores, this is where these fail. These break all the time due to that. There is absolutely no tang going through these knives. Watch out for that. These things are marketed as survival knives, and they're just selling you a toy. They're not selling you a tool. Now let's look at one of the big subjects that are debated about all the time is what's the length? How long does my belt knife need to be? Well, what you'll find is the longer the knife gets, the less useful it is for those common chores. You gotta remember, these belt knives are being selected for your common chores, not for just chopping down a tree. Okay, we have chopper tools specifically for that. So this is more of, your belt knife's more like a companion. Your belt knife's going to take care of all those smaller chores, all those common chores that you need to do. And then when you need to remove a lot of material or chop something down or anything, you're moving to your saws and you're moving your axes, or you're moving to big chopper type tools, okay? That's not your belt knife, all right? And get that out of the way. So how long should we go for? Well, I generally find, let me pull this one out right here. This is a top Sandaconda, okay? A lot of times people will look at this and say, oh man, that's really cool, I need to get that. That'd make an awesome belt knife. All you're doing is putting something on your side to display something to try to look cool. This is not a functional belt knife, okay? My friend and buddy Josh Enyart, I think he nails it perfectly. He calls this a sharpened crowbar. He's absolutely right. What you want to look for, your body mechanics and your arm length actually have a lot to do with how long your belt knife should be, okay? So let's look at it this way. So I have this belt knife. This is a GP2 Mini Puko. When you're slicing something, if you watch your arm and you slice down it, when your arm starts turning, your wrist starts turning to finish that cut, you should be right down the blade, right on to where that curve is, okay? I find that 3.5 to 5 inches is about right for just about anyone. A blade within 3.5 to 5 inches, okay? Perfect for a belt knife for those body mechanics. The other consideration is if you're batoning wood with your knife, okay? If I'm batoning wood with my knife, I want a blade that's bigger than the thing I'm batoning. So if I figure I'm going to go out in the woods and I'm batoning 3-inch diameter material, I want a blade that's bigger than 3 inches, because as you baton this down through it, you want enough of the material of your blade sticking out. You don't want just the tip, because if you're bashing on that tip, you have a chance of breaking it. Okay, you want enough of that material out that you have some decent spine, some strong spine there that you'll be able to go down through. Again, it's all about your skill in making good choices with your knife. If you are out there baton smaller things, softer woods with your belt knife, you'll be good to go. Anything bigger or anything of hardwoods or knots in it, like that, you should be moving on to a different tool, okay? Now let's look at the thickness of the blade. Now the thickness of the blade, we're talking about this thickness here, okay? How thick is that spine? If you go too big, the whole entire knife is going to be heavy and awkward and unbalanced, okay? I find about 1/8 of an inch is shooting somewhere in that area is pretty good for a belt knife, okay? It's strong enough, it's adequate enough to deal with what you put it through if you're being careful. And also, the smaller it is, you'll find the more agile it is. And also, if it's thinner, you can get into places easier with it when you're doing some of your projects and some of your cuts. You'll find when you go out into the field and you're actually doing this stuff, you'll be like, wow, that's way easier than this other knife that I got that's way too thick. Okay, this one's pretty thick. All right, I find this one's very hard at doing some of those common chores just because of the thickness of the blade. Okay, you don't want to go too thin, then you're pushing yourself the other way and chancing that you're going to be doing some damage because it's too thin and breaking your knife. Now the height of the blade. Now, the height of the blade, a lot of times people will come up to me and show me some of these, hunting knives or that they use for belt knives and everything. These are nice, but the problem is when you go to cut stuff like notches or anything, the height of the blade, this way, gets in the way. You can't get down into those notches the way you want to because the blade's too high. I tend to like to go about a thumb size. Okay, this one would be too big for me to consider it being a good belt knife. Looking at something more like that height right there. I can get my thumb right behind it. Okay, that's about the height that you want to be able to get down in there and make those cuts and make those notches. Okay, and that's what we're going for as far as the height. Now the grind on the knife, that's the edge. How do they grind it to come down to that pointed edge? Okay. So there tends to be, there's lots of different grinds, just like there's lots of different profiles. Generally, if you talk about one end of the spectrum, you're talking about convex grinds, which they come down to, it kind of curves down to a point, okay? That leaves a lot of material at that point, which makes it very strong. It's not the sharpest, but it makes it very strong. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a flat grind, which just comes down straight to the point. Leaves very little material at that point, but it is very, very sharp. Very low material gets damaged a lot. A lot of material doesn't get damaged as much, generally speaking. Okay? So there's lots of grinds in between there. Generally, I like to look at a Scandinavian grind. A Scandinavian grind is a grind that you want to look for. It's built for wood specifically. It works great with wood. Okay. Another option off a Scandinavian grind is called a saber grind. Okay. A saber grind is a Scandinavian grind with a secondary bevel on the end, which creates more strength on the edge. Okay, so it doesn't damage as well, but it also stays fairly sharp because it's a Scandinavian grind. Okay, so a Scandinavian grind or a saber grind. This Mora Garberg has kind of a saber grind. Okay, it's kind of a Scandinavian grind, but they have a micro bevel grind on the very edge of it to give it a little bit more strength. Okay. Now you probably noticed that most of my knives have most of the knives that I consider good belt knives have a 90-degree spine on the back. Okay, it's not rounded, and it's also not coated. Okay, the reason for this is the 90-degree spine on the back of these. Here, let's grab a little more again. The 90-degree spine on the back of these can be used for scraping material, or it can be used for your ferro rods as your scraper. Works very, very well for that, and some techniques with that. A lot of people debate this, whether it should have a 90-degree spine or not. One of the things that I'm finding as I'm going to research it and seeing if they have legitimate concerns is that they say that when you do the thumb assist technique, when you're cutting something, that 90-degree spine hurts your thumb. I have 90-degree spines on the knives that I use most often. I do thumb assist all the time, and I haven't had an issue. That doesn't mean they're not having an issue. What I believe is happening is the thumb assist method is not for cutting a ton of material off in one swipe. Okay, I think they're biting off more than they can chew. All right, you're supposed to do small, precise cuts, taking off small material, and if you're pushing so hard with your thumbs that spine on the back of that knife is hurting your thumb, you're doing it wrong. Okay, it's your technique that's the issue, not the 90-degree spine. Okay, just look into that. But I highly recommend a 90-degree spine. Opens up a lot of techniques that you can do between fire and collecting material and processing things in the woods that you might need. 90-degree spine, definitely a must-have. So let's look at handles, handle types. So the handle material itself really comes down to two things: durability and looks. Okay, and there's stuff in between, but you really want something that's durable. You don't want your handle breaking on you while you're using it. You want this tool to last a long time. You want it to be an heirloom. You want to be able to hand it down. Having said that, doesn't mean that you can't have nice looking material as long as it's durable. Make sure durability is above looks. Okay. The only other thing I would say as far as the handle goes is that if you're just starting out, you're a beginner with your knife skills, or say a child is learning knife skills, you want a ricasso or a finger guard on it. Okay. So say like this one has a finger guard or a ricasso on it. All right. If I put my hand here and I don't have very good skills and I go to stab something, my hand, if that's not there, is going to slide right up that blade. Okay. So a finger guard is a consideration for beginners and especially for children. Okay. Highly recommended safety feature. Something like some of these Pucos, if you notice, there's no ricasso and no finger guard on these. These are for, when your skill level gets up there better and you're being careful, still people can cut themselves. Just be aware there's no guard on this, okay? That's something to consider, all right? So I find the most useful part of the blade is this area right here closest to the handle. Okay, that is your point of leverage. When you're striking a ferro rod with your 90-degree spine on the top, when you're cutting things on the bottom, this is where your power is, okay? So we don't want anything here that's going to mess with that, all right? You want to stay away from, let me see what we got here. You want to stay away from sawbacks, okay? You want to, see what else we got. You want to stay away from serrated blades here. This one's even moved up more. So here's my point of leverage, but there's no blade here, okay? So there's no blade here, and then this is all serrated. So before I get to actual blade use, I'm way up here. I've lost all my power, okay, where I need it all back here by the handle, okay? So sawbacks, serrated edges, just kind of stay away from that stuff. That you don't need that on your belt knife, and it kind of removes the real estate that you need that actually functions for the chores you want, okay? So just watch out for those and try to stay away from those. So I know that was a lot of information to process. I hope that was all information that you could use to go out and get a good belt knife. Um, you know, this is a video so you can go back and rewatch it. Folks, just be careful and be very critical of the marketing on a lot of these knives. They're just trying to get you to buy the product. They don't care if it's actually functional for you. You're the one that has to determine whether it's functional, okay? For those of you that don't want to go out and buy a knife and then find out it's not a good belt knife because you just don't want to waste the money, you just want someone to tell you what to go get, I will put some recommendations in the description on this video for you, and you can go out and check some out, okay? Beyond all this teaching on this, the best way to figure out if a belt knife is going to work is get out in the field and use it, okay? Now, use it with safety and be smart about how you're doing things so you don't damage you or the blade. But get out and use it, because as you go through, as I'm going through my techniques with this thing, I'm going to find out how inadequate this knife actually is, okay? As I go through my techniques, and I'm using this one, and I go to flip it around to use it for techniques and find, wow, I'm getting a lot of hot spots on my hand from this handle, the way that it's curved and everything. It's like, I'm going to find out this isn't what I want for a belt knife. Shooting back on that subject just real quick, is I tend to like a handle that's fairly straight and swelled in the center and tapers down to the edges. It just works multiple directions, side direction, front, reversal. You have a lot of techniques with that. Something else to look for with the handle. But all these things you're going to learn when you go out and actually use knives. If you got some belt knives now, go out and use them on some things and see, is this not going to work for me? Okay? So take this information. If you need training for your skills, to enhance your skills for knife cutting, just contact us at Rangers Ridge. Like and subscribe to this video. I'll have more up here for you guys. And check us out at rangersridge.com. Thank you very much.